My husband and I were struggling, but this time he humiliated me in front of his friends during game night. She still thinks her Etsy shop is a business, he scoffed loud enough for all to hear. His best friend whispered, "You could do so much better." I smiled through it. 4 days later, I cashed the biggest order of my life, and ignored his texts. Wesley and I met in line for coffee at a tiny spot in Williamsburg called Variety. He accidentally took my drink, black coffee with cinnamon, no sugar, and when I pointed it out, he just smiled and said, "I guess fate has good taste." It was stupid. Corny. But it worked. We moved fast. Moved in after 6 months, married within 2 years. Back then, we were still figuring things out. He had a good job at a small tech company downtown, and I had just quit teaching art to focus on my handmade candle and decor shop, Willow and Fern. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had energy. Hope. Teamwork. I remember him staying up late with me during the holiday rush, carefully packing orders while watching old seasons of The Office. We used to joke that someday we'd be rich just from wax and wicks. He called me his candle queen. I called him CEO of Vibes. We were corny together. Things changed after his company got acquired. Suddenly, he had money, a fancier title, and new friends. The Patagonia-wearing, crypto-talking, perfectly trimmed beard kind of crowd. And I started noticing the shift in the way he spoke to me. Little comments. Subtle digs. Jokes that didn't quite feel like jokes. Like when I'd excitedly tell him about a new follower with a large platform, he'd nod distractedly and say, "That's cute." Or when I hit $1,000 in monthly sales for the first time, he said, "Now imagine if you applied all that effort to something real." I thought maybe he was just stressed. We weren't connecting the same. I'd try to bring it up, ask if he was okay, if we were okay, but he always brushed it off. "We're fine, Cass. You overthink everything." Still, I stayed in my lane. Worked harder. Tried new designs. Learned SEO and branding. Hustled, really hustled, even when it felt like I was working in a vacuum of doubt. Then came game night. Wesley hosted poker night once a month. A holdover from college. I didn't like it, but I never stopped it. I figured, let the guys have their thing. I'd usually stay in the bedroom, let them drink and yell and make bad jokes. But that night, I'd spent the day baking. I'd made sweet potato crostinis with honey drizzle, because one of his friends was vegetarian, and I made candied nuts from scratch. Just trying to be a good partner. I walked into the living room carrying the platter, smiling, hoping for a simple thanks. But before I even reached the table, Wesley saw me and said, loudly, "Here she comes. Still thinks her Etsy shop is a business." Then he laughed. The room laughed too. Like it was an inside joke. I froze. Just stood there, holding this tray I'd spent 2 hours prepping, and felt my ears start to burn. I looked at him, hoping it was sarcasm, hoping for a wink, a smirk, something to show he didn't mean it like that. Nothing. And then Aiden, his smug finance friend, leaned closer to him and whispered, "You could do so much better." Not that quietly, either. I didn't say a word. Just nodded, walked over, set the food down, and left the room. I didn't cry. I didn't storm off. I didn't throw a dramatic fit. But inside? Something cracked wide open. Like something in me had just decided, this is the last time he gets to humiliate me. He never came to check on me that night. I stayed in our bedroom, listening to them yell and laugh and talk like frat boys while I sat with my laptop and stared at my dwindling order count. Just 2 open orders. Barely enough to cover shipping for the next batch of materials. And then I remembered Celine. Celine Morgan was a high-end wedding planner based in Soho. She'd followed my shop's Instagram months ago. Liked a photo of my custom lanterns once, but never ordered anything. Still, I figured, why not? I messaged her that night. Wrote the most passionate, unhinged, caffeine-fueled pitch of my life. Attached mock-ups. Photos. Price estimates. Told her I'd make 150 custom pieces for her upcoming outdoor wedding. Told her I'd handle every detail personally, and guaranteed delivery within 6 weeks. Did I have the manpower? No. Did I have the inventory? Not really. But what I had was rage. And desperation. And focus. At 8:12 the next morning, she replied. Let's talk today. I'm interested. I didn't tell Wesley about Celine's reply. I didn't tell anyone, actually, not even Jules, my best friend since high school, who usually knew everything. That morning, I cleaned the kitchen while Wesley groaned about his hangover and asked if we had Gatorade. I handed him water without a word and kept moving. I took the Zoom call from the corner of our apartment I used as my workshop. Behind me were shelves of dye, wax blocks, ribbons, and cords. It didn't look like much, but I'd built that space with love. It was mine. Celine appeared on screen wearing oversized glasses and no makeup, hair in a bun. She was direct. Efficient. She said she needed candle centerpieces, table decor, and a few art installations for a wedding in Hudson Valley in late May, just 4 weeks away. I said yes to everything. When she asked if I could handle the scale, I lied and said I'd done similar orders before. She narrowed her eyes and said, "You've got 3 days to show me a prototype. If I like it, we move forward." We hung up. I stared at the wall for a minute, then stood up and started moving. There's a kind of adrenaline that only shows up when you've been underestimated for so long. You start to believe proving people wrong is part of your survival. I didn't sleep for 2 nights. I built, painted, wired, polished, and reshot my entire branding. I poured candles while audio from martyr documentaries filled the background. I tracked drying times and experimented with wax blends to make them burn longer. I set alarms to rotate drying lanterns like I was flipping pancakes. By the time Celine followed up, I had not 1, but 3 prototypes. Custom scented, hand-dyed, with pressed wildflowers sealed in resin and paired with braided cords that matched the wedding's theme, Twilight Garden. She loved them. The contract was signed the next day. $14,200. $14,200. I read the number twice. Then again. It didn't even feel real. I transferred the deposit into my business account with shaking hands. My first 5-figure order. No fanfare. No champagne. No one clapping me on the back or saying, "I knew you could." Just me, sitting in a corner of a 1-bedroom apartment, surrounded by melting wax and burnt wicks. Wesley didn't notice. He asked what I wanted for dinner. Suggested Thai. I said, "I'm working late." He didn't ask what on. He'd stopped asking months ago. By day 3, I needed help. I called Jules. She showed up in leggings and an old hoodie, took one look at the chaos and said, "Oh my God, are you opening a factory?" I grinned. First time I'd smiled like that in a long time. I told her everything. The game night. The order. The timeline. She didn't say anything at first, just picked up a glue GN and got to work. We spent the next 10 days in production mode. The apartment smelled like lavender and firewood. There were delivery boxes stacked in the hallway. Wesley started sleeping in the living room most nights. Said he had a lot on his mind. I didn't care. I had too much to do. One night, he wandered in while I was painting ceramic lanterns and asked, "So, are you even gonna clean this stuff up?" I didn't even look up. Just said, "Nope." He scoffed and walked away. I almost laughed. I think a part of me wanted him to keep pushing. Because the more he ignored my success, the more invisible I became in our home, the clearer everything became. He didn't want me to succeed. He wanted me to stay small. For days before delivery, Celine's assistant emailed saying they needed to increase the order, an extra 40 units of table decor. Rush. Premium pay. I said yes. I barely ate those last few days. Jules basically lived with me. I Venmo'd her $800 for her help, but she refused it. "I'm not taking your money," she said. "I'm taking a front row seat to your villain origin story." When everything was packed, labeled, and picked up by the delivery service, I stood in the middle of the room and took a deep breath. I had done it. By myself. And that's when Wesley texted. "Hey, you okay? Sorry about game night. The guys were just messing around." He sent it while he was out. I was alone, the place finally clean again, my hands stained from paint and wax. I read the message and didn't feel anger. Just emptiness. Because now, it wasn't about game night. It was about the fact that he saw me as a joke. And now that he sensed I might not be one, he was trying to pull me back into the box he was comfortable keeping me in. I didn't reply. The next morning, I opened Etsy and saw something I'd never seen before. My storefront had gone viral. Celine had posted a behind-the-scenes video of her event prep on TikTok, tagging me. Over 180,000 views. My DMs were full. My inbox was chaos. I had to pause my shop to catch up with custom requests. People were asking if I offered wholesale. If I taught classes. If I shipped internationally. I bought myself a new domain name that afternoon. Created a business email. Signed up for a trade show in Beacon. And still, I said nothing to Wesley. He started trying to ask more questions. One night, after work, he walked in and said, "So, you're getting orders or something?" I just said, "MHM." He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Like I'd grown into someone he never expected, and maybe didn't want. But I was fine with that. Because I was starting to realize, I didn't want him either. A week passed before he noticed the new logo. I'd printed it on stickers for my shipping boxes: minimal, clean, elegant. Willow and fern, curated earth-made living. It had taken me 5 hours on Canva and another 2 tweaking it in Photoshop, but it felt like me, grown up, intentional, bold. Wesley came home from work and saw one of the shipping boxes on the counter. He picked it up. Turned it in his hands. Raised his eyebrows like he didn't quite get it. "This new?" he asked. I didn't look up from my laptop. "Yeah." He hesitated. "Looks legit." I kept typing. He didn't like that. That week, I did something else I hadn't done in years. I scheduled a meeting with a business coach. A real one. Not some Instagram guru who sold templates, but an actual consultant who worked with indie creatives and small studios. Her name was Mara. She was based in Park Slope and ran her sessions from a loft filled with books and cats and abstract paintings. Mara didn't ask me what I wanted to make. She asked what I wanted to build. And it was like my brain flipped on for the first time in forever. I told her about the viral post. The orders. The limited space. She took notes, nodded, and said, "You're at a breaking point. You either plateau here, or scale up." That word, scale, stuck with me. We spent 3 hours planning out what it would look like to run Willow and Fern as an actual design studio. Physical space. Inventory storage. Hiring assistants. Possibly transitioning off Etsy altogether and onto my own site. It sounded wild. It sounded like freedom. That night, I found myself eating leftovers in silence while Wesley scrolled on his phone. I was thinking about studio rentals and Red Hook and production timelines and whether I could afford to buy a Cricut machine without dipping too deep into the order funds. He was reading a meme about Elon Musk. And just like that, I realized, I didn't know this man anymore. Or maybe I did. Maybe this was him all along, and I'd just been too in love, too loyal, too hopeful to see it. He looked up mid-scroll and said, "You've been quiet lately. What's going on in that little head of yours?" My jaw clenched. I gave him a tight smile. "Nothing you'd be interested in." He laughed like I'd made a joke, but I didn't laugh back. That was the night I emailed a real estate agent about studio spaces. Jules came with me the next week to see the space in Dumbo. It wasn't big, but it had light, 3 massive windows overlooking the bridge. Exposed brick. A little alcove for a work table and shelving. And best of all, a short-term lease. It was a little over my budget. But I could make it work. "I'd paint here," I said quietly, standing in the middle of the room. Jules grinned. "You'd thrive here." I signed the lease that afternoon. Didn't even tell Wesley. When the invoice came for the second half of Celine's order, I transferred the payment into my account without ceremony. 14,250. I stared at the number for a while. Let myself feel it. Then I closed the browser and got back to work. The next few weeks blurred into early mornings and late nights. I hired a part-time student from Pratt to help with production. I paid her fairly. Gave her a bonus when she finished early. I built a custom scent line, 5 signature blends. Updated my Etsy banners. Reinvested in packaging. Upgraded my candle molds. The business was no longer just a dream. It was breathing. And Wesley? He was trying. Sort of. He started asking questions again. Trying to hang around the workspace. Making comments like, "Maybe I could build you a website." Or, "I could help you scale this." But it was always him helping me. Never us. And I didn't need his help anymore. I was tired of pretending. One night, he came home with 2 paper bags from our favorite Thai place and said, "Thought you could use a break." He unpacked the food and poured us wine. Tried to start small talk. Told me Aiden had broken up with his girlfriend. I looked up from my plate and said, "You know what he said to you that night? About doing better?" Wesley blinked. "Who?" "Aiden. During game night." He shifted. "Cass, come on. That was just dumb banter. You know how guys are." "No. I know how you are," I said. "And you didn't say anything to defend me." He went quiet. "Do you even know what it felt like?" I asked. "To stand there holding a tray of food and hear you mock me to your friends?" He put his glass down. "I didn't mean it like that. You know how guys, I'm not asking what you meant. I'm telling you how it landed." He sighed. "Okay. I'm sorry. Can we just move on?" But the thing is, we couldn't. Because I had moved on. And he hadn't even noticed. Wesley started being nice again. Not warm. Not romantic. But performatively nice. He started asking how my day was. Buying groceries. Folding laundry that sat too long in the dryer. He even followed Willow and Fern on Instagram, liked 3 photos back to back, then sent a thumbs up emoji to a story I posted about prepping for the spring artisan market. It was like he sensed the shift and didn't know how to stop it. But it was too late. I'd already outgrown the version of me who needed his approval. Or his validation. Or his clumsy, delayed apologies. By the time April rolled around, my studio was fully furnished. I had a new intern, 2 steady wholesale clients, and had hired a photographer to revamp my entire catalog. Etsy was still running in the background, but now it was just a funnel. I was booked for 2 weddings in June and another in September. Every dollar I earned was reinvested back into the business, and into myself. For the first time in years, I could breathe. That's when the final crack in the relationship appeared. We were having breakfast, he was scrolling his phone, I was sketching new centerpiece designs, and he casually said, "You've been doing well." It's nice. But maybe it's time to think about slowing down. I looked at him. Slowing down? I asked. Yeah, he said. Just. I don't want you burning out. Or letting it get to your head. You're lucky, babe. Not everyone gets a little hobby that blows up. Hobby. That word sat between us like a wine stain on a white carpet. I didn't argue. I just stood up, rinsed my plate, and grabbed my laptop. Booked a one-night stay at the TWA hotel near JFK. I needed quiet to finish my summer catalog. Told him I'd be gone overnight. His jaw twitched, but he nodded. Okay. Don't work too hard. The next day, I left the apartment with 2 bags, one with clothes, and one with important documents and my favorite sketchbook. But I didn't go to the hotel. I went to a lawyer. I'd already been talking to her quietly for weeks. Her name was Deja, and she was a specialist in amicable separations for creative entrepreneurs. She helped me draft a clean plan, no fighting over property. No drama. No entanglement. The apartment lease was in my name. I'd kept all business finances separate. There were no kids. No shared investments. Just emotional debris and a decaying bond. When I got back to the apartment, he was on the couch, watching a Netflix documentary and eating leftover pad thai. I handed him the envelope. What's this? I think you know. He opened it. Read the first page. Looked up. You're serious? Yes. He scoffed. Cass, come on. This is ridiculous. You're just stressed. You don't mean this. I've never meant anything more. Silence. He stood up slowly, like he thought height might give him the advantage. You'd really walk away from everything we'd built? What exactly did we build? I asked, voice low. A marriage where I get laughed at in front of your friends and treated like a child every time I succeed? You're overreacting. No, I said calmly. I just finally reacted. He didn't fight. He didn't plead. Not really. Because deep down, he knew. He'd let the best parts of us rot in the corners, too distracted with ego to notice the mold creeping in. 3 weeks later, I moved into a loft above a flower shop in Carroll Gardens. It was half the size of our old place, but it had plants hanging in the window and a little balcony where I could have coffee in the morning. The studio was just a 10-minute bike ride away. I slept with the windows open that first night, listening to the city buzz and letting my body feel the absence of his presence. It felt like peace. Not loneliness. Just air I didn't have to share. I never blocked him. He texted a few times in the months after. Hope you're doing okay. Saw your new stuff online. Looks amazing. You ever think about us? Once, he tried calling. I didn't answer. Not out of spite. Just, no longer my job to hold space for a man who never held space for me. 6 months later, I stood at a vendor's market in Prospect Park under a white canopy tent, my hands covered in wax stains, my hair in a messy bun, and my products displayed with professional tags and handwritten descriptions. A woman approached. Late 40s, elegant, kind eyes. Are you Cassandra? She asked. I smiled. That's me. My daughter showed me your Instagram. She's getting married next year and loved your Twilight lanterns. We talked. She left with a sample. I left with a deposit and a soft, glowing warmth that felt nothing like revenge. But maybe it was. Because the best kind of revenge isn't loud. It doesn't burn bridges or throw punches or write angry posts on Facebook. It's a quiet reclaiming. A life rebuilt without them in it. It's a woman, once dismissed as a girl with a hobby, standing in the sun while strangers admire her work, ask her advice, and pay her for her vision. That's my story. No dramatic public clapback. No screaming match or shattered plates. Just slow, steady, undeniable elevation. And every now and then, when I light one of my candles in the evening and smell that soft blend of sandalwood and bergamot, I think about that night, game night, and I smile. Because he doesn't get to laugh at me anymore. And he sure as HLL doesn't get to watch me shine.